What evidence supports the idea that consciousness exists in a four-dimensional reality? Where did this idea originate from? Well, firstly, it's not an idea because it is beyond anything the mind can imagine. If it was an idea, somebody would have imagined it. The number of people who are trying to solve, to understand what is all this? What is life? What is form? What is matter? What is energy? What is space? What is time? We could have easily stumbled upon the idea that, hey, why not a higher dimension? Because there are several theories that suggest that there are higher dimensions. It is not a problem of imagining higher dimensions. It is a problem of not imagining. Can you stop imagining? Because if you imagine it, you will miss it. We know how to solve problems in our three-dimensional world by visualizing the problem, by imagining the solution. It always comes to us through imagination. Einstein himself said, the most important thing is not intelligence, but imagination. Your ability to imagine will present you with new problems in a way that nobody saw it. To imagine riding on a beam of light, that is imagination. To imagine what would happen if your friend were to travel faster than the speed of light when he actually cannot. What happens if you keep on giving more and more energy to this spaceship and it is able to go faster than the speed of light? Because nothing can go faster than the speed of light, he would be moving into the future in reference to you. So when he comes back, you would be a lot older than him. This is pure imagination. This helped Einstein to formulate some of the most successful, elegant of theories, to suggest that there is a space-time fabric. Space and time are not two different things, but they are one and the same. And gravity influences both. It influences space, it influences time as well. Now his equations proved to be right. It helped us to understand gravity in a totally new way. Before him, Newton's equations were successful, but over long distances, there was a problem. Because Newton had assumed that gravity acts instantaneously over long distances. But that was a problem for Einstein, because there is a limit, speed limit for the transfer of information. Now, how can two bodies separated across light years can communicate instantaneously? How can gravity propagate through space and time without needing any time? That is when he suggested that gravity is not a force as we traditionally see it, It is the bending of the space-time fabric itself when there is a heavy object of mass and energy. He did this purely by imagining. And then comes the mathematics. Mathematics cannot solve a problem. It can only help you prove if you had formalized the problem correctly and if you are able to understand the solution. You cannot start with mathematics. If you have two equations that are not balancing, if you have two different fields, let's say quantum mechanics and general relativity, and they are not compatible. General relativity explains things beautifully on large scale. But when it comes to the quantum level, it falls apart. Einstein had assumed space-time to be a smooth fabric. Now, if you apply the equations for the smooth fabric, they tend to infinity and lose all meaning. Because in the quantum world, everything has to be quantized, including space and time. Because everything is popping in and out of existence, including space. It is not a continuous fabric. Particles are popping in and out of existence that is creating the space-time fabric. Einstein's equations will not work there. Imagination is fabulous to solve problems in our world of imagination. Our world is a perceptual world. It is the way it is because it is being perceived this way. Now, we had always rejected, we have been wary of this idea because it brings in subjectivity. The moment you say the perceiver is interfering with the process of creation, he's interfering with the created, everything gets complicated. Now, how do you account for it? Whose perception are you talking about? Are you talking about the perception of the person who's conducting the experiment? Are you talking about the perception of the one who's imagining the problem? Whose perception are we talking about? That is why science completely steered away from answering this question. Perception has nothing to do with creation. Creation is objective. Everything in our universe is objective. So, let us solve the problems based on how we are experiencing these problems. Let us solve one problem at a time. Eventually, we will figure out everything. The problem with this approach is it will give you mathematical equations. It will give you solutions that will work in particular contexts. In fact, they'll work brilliantly in explaining many things within that context. For example, general relativity, explaining things on a large scale. But if it cannot be applied at the quantum level, it just means that there is something not right with the theory. There is something it is missing. Now, it has to be missing because Einstein came up with these equations, imagining the problem, and then imagining the solution. What I am talking about cannot come from imagination. It comes from an experiential dimension. As much as I would like to think that I was able to formulate, I was able to put together mathematically, scientifically, a way of explaining what consciousness is, for me, it came in the opposite direction. I did not go to it, it came to me. This might sound very mystical and philosophical, but it isn't. It is very scientific. I've spent the last 10 years of my life mostly meditating. I would have sat in meditation for more than 20,000 hours. My entire life for the past 10 years has been to experientially understand what life is. Understand the body, understand the mind, understand the mystery of life. Not experimentally on the outside, but experientially. Now, this journey, as long as it has been, eventually led to the realization of a very simple and yet very profound fact that consciousness is not human. Consciousness is not biological. Consciousness is not created. It is not generated. It is a fundamental property of a higher realm. A realm that is outside of time and space. A realm that is beyond the capabilities of our imagination to grasp. Not because it is extremely complicated, not because it is somewhere far away. It is because it is too elegant, too beautiful, too simple, and extraordinarily objective and scientific. In fact, it is so objective, so scientific that it even baffles our scientific mind. Because even our scientific mind is too complicated to grasp this. Our mind thinks in structures. It thinks in steps. It thinks in gradations. This requires a giant leap. The problem is really the world we occupy and what we are familiar with. Just as a two-dimensional creature cannot even comprehend what three-dimensional space is, a three-dimensional being cannot even comprehend what four-dimensional realm would be. When you try to do it mathematically, you cannot get it. Once you get it, you can prove it mathematically. But till you get it, you will not even know how to mathematically formulate it. Because how do you apply mathematics to something that is outside of space and time? We have a word for it. If something is utterly impossible to explain using our three-dimensional physics and math, we call that singularity. Singularity is, in scientific definitions, it is a single point of infinite density, so dense that its gravitational field warps time and space around it. It twists it so much that it loses all its meaning. The idea space, the word time lose all their meaning. We say there is a singularity at the center of every black hole. In fact, our universe was born from a singularity. It is said that before the point of explosion, everything we are seeing and experiencing now as our universe was packed on a single point, so dense that you cannot comprehend the idea of space and time around it because it is so warped. This is what we define as singularity. Now, what is the problem here? The problem is actually very simple. We did not see it because we simply didn't know how to see beyond this problem. Sometimes, if we see there is no way to find the solution, we will not see the problem. It's just the human nature. If we are saying that there is a point, an extraordinarily dense point, that is curving the very space-time fabric, the question is, where is this point? How can this point be inside our three-dimensional space-time and curve the space-time so much around it? If this point exists, it has to exist outside of our space-time. Otherwise, how can it curve the space-time of the fabric that it is on? Then it itself will be distorted. Then there will be no meaning for its existence. It is obvious that there is something more to this. Singularity appears like a single point because of the limitation of our three-dimensional perception. If that point were to be a four-dimensional point, four-dimensional realm is a totality. There are no separate points. Each point in the higher realm is a totality. It experiences itself as a totality, which is what consciousness is. Consciousness is the fourth dimension. Now, if you were to look at consciousness, how would you see it? What would it appear as? Imagine there is a hole in the fabric of our space-time and you are actually able to see the fourth dimension. What would it look like? It would look like a black hole.